Welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Gems podcast. It is your host, KILLA. And today I have another special guest with me. She is a mental health and wellness advocate, tech girly, owner of Keep Glo'N Wellness, beautiful friend of mine that I've met in the gym. Let me introduce you guys to Christina Marseille. How we doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah, we don't waste no time. If you want to, just give a quick, just brief background of, who you are and kind of what you do, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of it all.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I am owner of a mental wellness shop and a project called Keep Glo'N Wellness. It is all about, normalizing conversations around mental health, making it more accessible. And now it's also just emphasizing the fact that caring for your mental well being can be a part of like your day to day. And it's not something that just has to be reactive. I am also a tech girly, like you mentioned. Right now, I work as an instructional designer. I've been in the tech space for about 5 years now, and now I'm kind of like collab or combining that with. I'm also in the education space, so like combining education with technology, and also because of my work with the mental health space. So I'm like I have an opportunity to kind of combine it all together. But
Nice. Kind of wait, quickly run that back. What did you say you were doing in tech?
instructional designer.
Instructional design. Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
that went way over my head.
No, it's honestly, a lot of people don't really know what that is. I was a UX designer before. People didn't know what that was. And it's one of those things I didn't know either. I changed careers. So it's very common for people to not really know because
Mm,
it's only like 3% of Black people in the tech space. So,
of course, and we need more.
yeah.
Okay, so let's start with before you even created Keep Glo'N Wellness, right? What was what did you imagine like your career would be before you even thought about becoming like a business owner?
One, I never thought I was going to be a business owner for sure. So I thought I was going to be a nurse. I'm Haitian. So if you're Haitian, that's not shocking because you really can only have what, 4 career paths: doctor, nurse, lawyer, engineer. Outside of that, you can't really be anything else. So I really thought I was going to be a nurse, which is kind of crazy because I don't like bodily fluids and I don't like blood. So I don't know how well of a nurse I would have been. And I knew that before going to school. But because just to make my parents proud, it was one of those things where my family's full of nurses. I didn't know what else to be. I didn't have the opportunity or space to even think of anything else. So that's what I went to college for initially. And then not even like my first semester, I ended up changing majors. I ended up changing to public health my first semester just because it just wasn't for me. Like, and I learned that really quickly. And then, yeah, I graduated in a degree in public health. And my path, even becoming a business owner, I kind of fell into it. I never really thought I would do that. I was very much, I would say, a rule follower. I grew up in a very sheltered upbringing, very, growing up in the Caribbean, religious, strict upbringing. I was a rule follower. I didn't take risks. I just did what I needed to do. So I knew I had to, do the things. Like I went to college, go up the corporate ladder. That's kind of like what I thought my life was going to be. I never thought about entrepreneurship. I heard about it and I was like, yeah, I know I need structure. And that's just kind of like what it was. But what ended up happening is when I ended up graduating undergrad, I think it also, because of the fact that I was sheltered too, I just wasn't ready for life. When real bills hit, where real life started to hit, like I genuinely was not prepared for it. So this whole going up the corporate ladder thing just was not really a reality for me. And that's kind of what sparked me going down the mental health advocacy route because I was not very for it. You can only imagine growing up in a Caribbean home in Christian spaces, mental health is not something that you really talk about, but I was struggling and I didn't really know what I was like feeling or going through. So I would say I fell into entrepreneurship. I don't know, that's kind of just the the gist of it. But that's kind of like where it all kind of stemmed from. My post grad experience and
Got
finding
you.
myself after that.
So I was gonna ask then, like, would you say like that was your inspiration for then obviously creating, keep glowing wellness, like because you were just like you felt so pressured to become one thing and that it just really was just like taking a toll on you that you just felt like it was just something that it kind of helped you, express yourself, but also give you a space to kind of breathe and also give, people like a space to kind of, really consider their own mental health as well?
Yeah, for sure. So it started off with the fact that I didn't have any spaces to talk about it. I couldn't talk about it with my friends. I couldn't really talk about it with my family, and I also didn't even know how to. Then I ended up remembering I worked on a college campus. That was one of the jobs because I ended up just doing dead end jobs after college. Even though I really wanted to get a job in public health, it didn't really. I realized without a master's degree, I couldn't really get the jobs that I wanted, and then the other ones that didn't pay very well. So it kind of became that's the other part of why I was struggling because I thought, once you get a job, things would kind of work itself out, but it didn't really work out for me. So one of the I because I was working on campus, I get notifications of like the events that are happening on campus. And there was an event that was going on for first generations. Because I was working at Harvard at the time, first generations in their experience on the college campus. And the reason why I say that is because Harvard is predominantly white, right? So it was so interesting hearing their perspective because mental health is not new to me. As a public health major, we talked about that, but I just kind of felt like that's not something we deal with. That's not something that that's there. It's a problem out there, but I don't gotta worry about that. So when I saw their faces, people that look like me, talking about mental health and their experiences, and not even just it's more so how they talked about it because they talked about the pressures of being a first gen. They talked about high functioning depression. I didn't even know what that was. There's so many terminologies I didn't even know even existed. Their experience finding a therapist and all that stuff. And I was like, it just kind of shined a light on my experiences that I kind of kept down. And I was like, okay, two things happened from that. One, we need to have more spaces to talk about this because the fact that they're talking about that so openly, it was like a beautiful thing to see. And then two, I need to get help because I was struggling and I didn't even know what help looked like. So that kind of went down. That is what opened up the journey of me seeking help and all of that. And then also from there, after I found a therapist, I started talking online. So Keep Glowing started off with just me posting encouraging content, me talking about my experiences. And honestly, everybody was on TikTok just talking about whatever. So I didn't really think anything of it. But then the comments is what made me realize I wasn't alone in what I was feeling. And then it also emphasized that we need more spaces like this. So that's just kind of how it started. It really just started off with me just posting content online and it kind of turned into what it turned into.
Do you feel like we're still, as a people, kind of still behind on, really addressing like our own mental health? Do you feel like you're still seeing like a lot of women and men who are just not coming out there and not just expressing their stuff, like they're not talking about it still? Like, are you still seeing that kind of as like that's something that's still going on? Like, there's so much more work to do.
For sure. That's kind of what made me so I'm in the space of relaunching for that reason. I think the issue is there's a gap between people, and it's not people's fault. It really isn't. There's a gap between people experiencing whatever they're experiencing and then getting help. And I think that is people's interpretation or access to knowledge of what that thing is. So, for example, how many of us learned about mental health through just we don't talk about our feelings in our family, right? Like where do we get these perceptions about mental health? And it's not our faults, right? Because if my parents, for example, they're immigrants. They didn't have time to feel. They had to do what they had to do. They had to survive. So I get why they don't talk about their feelings, but they pass it down. So I don't have to have that survival mindset as much as they did, but unfortunately they pass it down. So it just becomes this thing where people are not aware, it just gets passed down. So that's why I feel like what's missing now is just knowledge, honestly, and people shifting people's perspective of like what mental health is. Because even me, I don't know why, I just didn't realize that there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. You know what I mean? Like it's the same way we all have physical health and then there's physical illness, right? So mental health just straight up is just like our our emotional, psychological, and social well being. So, like how we think, feel, and act. That's just simply what it is. Nothing to do with the things that people can go through, like depression or anxiety. Everybody has mental health. It's good or bad. Everybody does. And I didn't realize it. I think we just have this negative connotation around it. And I think that's where it starts. It's just kind of like telling people or like kind of spreading that information that, like, okay, you may have learned this for whatever reason and it's not your fault, but now it's time to kind of shift the narrative. So a lot of change has happened, especially post pandemic. There's a lot more spaces talking about mental health, which is great, but I still think there's a lot more work to be done for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there about like feeling like it's definitely been passed down. Like I'm definitely, well, one, I'm one of three, oldest of three, and so with my folks, my father and my mother, like I don't think I've definitely really seen them really express themselves like to us to or express themselves just very often. I mean, there was a couple years ago where we flew out to, well, we were visiting my sister out in LA, and this is the first time that I've ever done therapy, like a therapy session. It was only because my sister was in therapy because she's going through this kind of like bipolar where like this bipolar something was going on with her and like her mentally and just being around people and just it just when things just become too much, she just has like a complete just like breakdown or she just like freezes. So yeah, it was just the time where we flew out to LA for therapy and like my dad didn't take the trip. Again, I'm not gonna bash him at all because he's not really the traveling type, but you know, he he chose to stay here and we had our therapy session, so we had to call him, and call in and we did the session that way. And yeah, it got pretty real, pretty sensitive. But yeah, it was like the first time that I did therapy, but that was the first time as a family that we had all just expressed ourself. Like we were able to kind of just address how we were feeling. And, I guess a little bit was more so of like how my sister was feeling before she had left because we were, out at dinner and then some words were not really exchanged, not really like, in like a angry manner or anything like that. But it was just like I always felt like my sister was just very just shut off from everybody. Like, you come in the house, my mom's door is open, my brother's door is open, my door is open, or her door is closed shut. So it just always just felt like you shutting us out. Like I always just felt like you were just there's always a door between us. So, I might have said something that made have trigger her and she probably maybe held on to that. But, we all talked about it. But I would definitely say, like, for sure, like, nowadays, because I know there's probably still a lot of men who just still won't, talk about how they're feeling or just address, like, how what they're going through mentally, and I can honestly say I'm still one that kinda falls into that category, and maybe just I don't like maybe I'm just still trying to find the purpose of having a therapist or having somebody to speak to about it. Because my personal take is I don't think that anybody can quite honestly help me get through what I'm going through because it's at the end of the day, it's still on me to get through it. No matter how much guidance, how much words of affirmation or whatever try to life you try to speak into me or whatever, you know, tools and exercises you may give me to do on my own, I'm still the one who has to go through it. So like I've literally for over, 32 now, I find my own ways of kind of just relieving my stress, kind of just float, just letting things just kind of just feel like I'm releasing the tension off my shoulders because I do feel responsible as a first gen to try to carry my family's name. I put a post up the other day where I was just like, I don't think anybody in my family is seen or made a million yet. So I want to be the first to do it. And I understand what that's going to entail. And that means that, sometimes I'm not going to speak to them all the time. My mother's always on my back about, making sure you're reaching out to, your brother and sister and, calling her and stuff like that. But I'm just like, I'm so locked in on trying to get to where I have to get to that sometimes it's just like, I know that suffers and I know I need to do a better job about that, reaching out and seeing how they feel and stuff. But I definitely feel as if the idea of just getting a personal therapist just hasn't really stuck with me just yet because, like I said, I have other ways of helping me relieve any what's the word I want to use? Any, like I said, this tension, but there's a word I want to use, but that's just the first word that keeps coming ahead. But anything that I'm feeling, that's just I have other avenues, other things to help me kind of just, you know, help me relieve all of that. And so, do you feel like there's just still not enough, like I said, kind of just, again, I'm more so just speaking for the men, maybe not for the, I don't know about the women, but maybe more so for the men that are just need to just kind of, maybe do a better job about kind of just addressing, you know, how they're feeling, or how can we go about that? Like, how can we go about, stop being a little bit stubborn about getting therapists and stuff like that and talking to others about how we're truly feeling?
Yeah. Honestly, the way you're feeling is normal. One thing, you need to have a safe space to talk about what you're feeling. Because if you just say how you feel around the wrong person, and also Black men especially don't have safe spaces to talk about their emotions. So it's like it's understandable why you feel that way. So it's understandable why you would be hesitant to find therapy because even with therapy, you have to find the right therapist because it's not like immediately because you find somebody that that person is going to help you because I'll say this point and then I'll go back to my point. Even when I first tried to find a therapist, I had to realize that one, they need to be culturally informed because what I'm not going to do is talk to you about racism. I'm talking here to talk about my problems. I'm not talking to try to explain to you about racism, okay? Like, or my culture.
Facts.
Like, no, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to, get through what I'm getting through. So I had to realize I had to find somebody that was already culturally aware, not necessarily like they have to be Haitian, but like at least you have an understanding of like Black culture before I even talk to you because you're going to dismiss my problems. It's just what it is, which was what happened. That's one thing. And then two, even the point that you mentioned about like, yes, yeah, you feel that, are the one that has to go through it. I completely understand that. I think the maybe a shift in perspective is that you don't have to go through it on your own. So it's like, yes, it's your responsibility to do what you have to do, right? Because you have a lot on your back, for your family and all the things. You don't have to carry it all by yourself. You know what I mean? So, and I say that, for example, I can flip it onto me, right? I feel pressure within myself, right? There's so many things that I'm learning that I was not taught. Nobody in my family has a business. Like, I don't know. That's the reason why I had to relaunch because I just was not. I had no financial literacy. I didn't know nothing. I'm just trying, right? But I realized the same way I can get a trainer to help me at the gym, right? I could go to the gym by myself, but the thing about having a trainer is it helps with accountability. It helps even with your like body prime, the community aspect. You're not in it, going through it by yourself. You know what I mean? Like, of course, you can do it by yourself, but I think we're meant to do things together. You don't have to carry it on our own. We have this belief because it could be passed down for so many different reasons why we're as Black people we're very resilient like from people that came before us, right? But we don't have to do it on our own. That's the thing. But I understand that not every space is like the most comfortable or the most appropriate to be able to share how you feel. But I think it's tough, especially for Black men, because even I've even seen people in my own life who would want a Black man to be more expressive. They do, and then they have their own negative opinions about it because he's expressing himself. You know what I mean? So it's like I think it's just within our culture. We need to. There's a lot of changes in perspective that kind of needs to happen. I don't know if I answered your question. If there was a part that I missed, let me know. But basically, I was going to say like you don't have to carry it on your own. And I think the reason why it might be hard to find a therapist or feel like you need one, I think it's just because finding that safe space can feel a little intimidating. But I don't know.
And like I see the constant spaces like that will pop up on my, you know, my timeline, and I always get the invitations and stuff like that. And again, I definitely, like I said, I see them and I'm like, do I want to go? And then I'm like, nah, because you know what? it's cool that I could listen to these other guys, and maybe, maybe I should just go, and then, maybe I can hear something that may, be beneficial to me. Maybe it's something that I actually need to hear. But I think, yeah, it's just because I'm so stuck in my way that, like you were saying, like I don't need to do it alone, but like I'm gonna feel just as a man, like, no, I'm gonna have to carry this. You can't hold my hand. You can't lead me there.
I
I
will
have to lead
say,
myself there.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I will
Yeah.
say if I would assume just based off what you just said, the first thing they'll probably tackle, if that's what you said, is tackling that belief. Like, why do you feel that way? So I just wanted to say that because the way when you're saying that, I'm like, I'm curious to know why I can understand without really knowing your backstory, just simply being a black man, where that can come from. But there's obviously probably multi layers to it. But I feel like that's would be like the first step to kind of tackling like why do you feel that way? Because our beliefs are tied to our mental health. Like that's ultimately like a huge part of it. So
Mm. So I guess with Keep Glo'N Wellness. So talk to me about. You said you were relaunching. So what's different now versus what you were doing beforehand?
yeah. So before it was primarily like I don't know if I should go down that rabbit hole where it even came from, but it was like affirmation cards and journals because the whole point of it was just creating, normalizing conversations and creating spaces for people to talk about it. So a lot of times journaling is a tool that people can use to kind of to put their thoughts onto paper. And I was kind of just encouraging that and also like positive reinforcement through like affirmation cards. That's what it started as. And then now I took a break because I went back to school. So now I'm in school for educational psychology to kind of put some of the stuff I knew just through my own experience through therapy to kind of have more foundational knowledge behind it. And I didn't do it intentionally for Keep Glowing. I honestly took a break from it just because I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I didn't really have a direction. I felt like even me launching took a lot of like pushing past my own fear to do. And it did well for like the first year. I could have done better, but I just think like I was just looking to my left and comparing myself to other people. Like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. I'm just trying things. I did my pop up shops, but I'm like, how do I handle money? It just became very messy. Like, so I took a break, but then I also went back to school. So then the thing with my program, you can have like a research focus in there. And for me, my focus was on trauma and how it affects well-being and behavior and realizing like what happens within our body when we're in like heightened stress. And the reason why that like was a focus for me was because I thought about the black community and how much we've normalized chronic stress. Chronic stress is high in our communities and we've normalized it. Like how many people do you know? I know people in my family that just work all the time and they never rest. It isn't until we're burnt out or like, we're falling apart or we're sick. That's when we start like taking care of ourselves.
Nah, I
And it
clipped
made
that
me
real
think,
quick.
hmm what
I said
happened?
I stopped. I stopped that like immediately. I knew that. Like, sorry to interrupt you, but yeah,
Oh, no, no, no.
I knew that immediately. Right when I got to corporate America, right out of school, I was like, the one thing I'm not gonna do after. I actually more so maybe after maybe like my first few years of adulting. When I was in the fitness industry, or I still am, but when I was personal training, when I had like 13, 14 clients, and I was just like, yo, I'm working my ass off, and this is a lot to deal with. But it was like after that, I was like, you know what? I am never going to burn myself out like that again. I am never going to let any of these jobs burn me out or stress me out ever again. That's why I take my frequent, now for the past 3 years, quarterly trips or so. Even if it's just personal or business, I need to get out because I can't be in a space for too long. Personally, I don't stay anywhere. Me personally, I don't stay anywhere more than 2 years. Once I do my 2 years, I'll figure out what I'm gonna do next. But yeah, I don't let these jobs or anywhere stress me the hell out.
And that's
But
important.
proceed.
No, and then that's a common thing. We were coming out of hustle culture. Like that was an actual thing. Like, was it 2010? Like it was like literally like on social media, like rise and grind. Like it's like there's a whole culture that was formed, and it's like now we're all post pandemic. Now we're all burnt out. So, anyways, but I realized as I was learning about that during my training, what goes on in the mind and in the body and how it literally affects our long-term well-being. And I realized that there's more that we need to do within our communities than just be aware of mental health. There's preventative things that we need to incorporate in our lives that can help us in the long run, right? So I focus this time around more on like helping people create like support systems and strategies that they can incorporate in their day to day, just so that I like to say it strengthens your mental health, right? The same way where, of course, you don't have to go to the gym. Of course, you don't have to eat well. You don't have to sleep well, but you're not at your most optimal physical health, right? The same way with our mental health. You can just live your life the way you want to. Nobody's telling you you don't have to do it, but you'd want to be at your most optimal mental health as well. You know what I mean? And there's things that you can incorporate into your day to day just so that, you're not waiting until life hits and then it
Mm-hmm.
takes you out. You know what I mean? Like you're able to have, I like to say, a protective layer against life's challenges. And I had to realize that how important that is just through what I've been learning and how it even affects our behaviors and how we act, our relationships, like all the things, and how if we had like stronger mental health, it would just help us in general. So that's why I focus primarily like on stress and burnout for like this collection this time around.
True. So what have you found so far? I guess the most talk about like what's been like the most rewarding with your brand, and then what you've been finding kind of challenging, to deal with, like past and like currently, like what you find challenging now.
Yeah, I would say the most rewarding for me, I'm an introvert. So the one thing I realized with having your own business, you have to talk. You are the face of your brand. So it forced me to step outside of my comfort zone and to talk because especially when I did pop-up shops, oh my gosh, that was just like, wow, all these people
Yeah.
talking to me. And it built up a skill within me because I have to not be afraid to be seen. I hated it. I still do, but I have to push myself. I go to networking events and it's like one of those things where I put myself out there. Like I have to be very strategic though, because I'm like, I have a social battery, but I have a plan when I go to these networking events. This is what I do. And I connect with these people. And then, anyways, I feel like it's just opened up the door for me to connect with a lot more people than I really expected. And then also, just the conversations that I've had. It's not even about people buying from me. It's more so like the conversations. Like I've had people come up to me and they're like, "Oh, wow." And then they just open up to me and I'm like, "You're a complete stranger." Like, but they just talking to me. So it's like I love that. I think I love just what it's growing me into and the confidence that it's been giving me just from that reason and also just the connections that I've been able to build just because of this. The negative parts of it,
It's not just
just
have to
face
be negative. Just say just what's most challenging. I don't want to call it
challenging.
anything negative. Like, what did
I
you
would say
find just
the
like
most
challenging? Like,
Yeah, the most challenging I would say is still the same thing, but on the flip. So being seen. Social media, I hate. I hate marketing. I hate sales. Like I hate that aspect of it. Like if I could just give everything for free, I would just because I want to help people. I hate like I don't know that part of business I just can't stand. But I realize that I have to be better about it. Which kind of led to me just being a lot more strategic this time around, having more foundational stuff, like even with my finances, having separate bank accounts. I did not have that. Everything was in one. So it was just like a hot mess. And it was just, I did taxes for the first time with my business. It was just,
yeah, I've been doing it for 3 years now.
yeah.
It never gets easier.
So I would say the most challenging is just some of the logistics, I would say, around the business. So the marketing part, sales, financial part, those are the most challenging just because I don't have anyone. I mean, I do, but I feel like when I was first starting, I definitely didn't know who to turn to. I was just trying and messing up and learning from it, and now I have more people that I could lean on for it. So this time around, the challenge now is like, I guess, putting myself back out there because I feel like I was kind of like, I didn't have to put out as much when I was taking a break. So now I have to just push myself back into that space again. So I'll say that.
Like more so like where I can, because I can see like on like the page, like you're obviously showing the product, but do you mean like just like showing like the
Me.
face to the brand?
Yeah,
Okay, got you,
me. I can
got you.
show the product all day. It's me
Hmm.
and like doing content and being like I'm just like, oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, no, it is a lot. Like it is a lot. That's why like over the past like 3 4 years, and actually no, we can even go back to like 2020, like when I first kind of really started doing entrepreneurship. Like it was a whole lot. Like from doing MLM marketing, trying to get people to join this damn, pyramid of people, like how hard it is. I have to, how many no's you got to take. Like that's not me. I'm not used to that type of constant rejection. I'm okay with rejection, but just not in a wave like that where I constantly have to keep asking and I keep hearing no,
Yeah,
no, 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 not interested. It's a scam. No, no. By the way, I would probably never ever do network marketing again because of that was that's a no no. But yeah, just I was just not used to that. Even like when I was doing e-commerce, I was the same way. Like I didn't know anything about how to market, how to do sales. I did pay for a photo shoot, like the with the product and stuff like that. But like I didn't have anybody like behind me to market it. Like I just kind of just, was just trying things. And then here we are, we're doing a podcast and like everybody who's really known me growing up knows that I'm not a man who talks a lot. I created this podcast to force me to talk more, to force me to have conversation with people and explore my curiosity. That's that's mainly why I started to do podcasting, because I felt like there's just I'm not expressing myself on like I don't really like to run the social media and really like talk about like pop culture and stuff like that, because I just, for me personally, I think it's just a little toxic, to be quite honest, for me. But I needed something where it was going to force me to speak, force me to chase my curiosity, force me to ask questions, and then just keep picking and picking and poking until I actually understand what I'm learning. And honestly, I have no problem being in front of a camera at all. But it was always just speaking in front of a camera. Like
I get it.
yeah, that was never me. But that's, like I said, I've been doing this 3 years now, and I'm not uncomfortable with it, but I wouldn't say I'm like the utmost confident with it, because every time I have an interview, it's like, damn, you gotta be. I want to be on point with my questions. Like I want to make sure I'm asking the right questions for the audience and stuff like that. Not that I'm trying to get into like journalism or like media, anything like that, but I'm definitely trying to just learn how to just probe and just ask the right questions for sure. But yeah, it's always definitely been challenging. What would you say is, now that you started your relaunch, what would you say is your long-term goal now for Keep Glowing?
Yeah, I definitely want to move beyond products. Products is just like the tool that I am basing it off of, or the foundation. Just because of the work that I have to do in like training, I definitely want to pivot more into like health education, like actually
Mm,
doing consulting or programming with like organizations or schools and things of that nature, do like well-being trainings and stuff like that. Like I would love to branch beyond just products. Products is more so like for people to have individually, like when they have no one. But I would love to branch out and just kind of, you know, uh, yeah, be an educator, like or well-being educator, I should say. Trying to own that title. You know what I'm saying? So
true. Entrepreneurship. So I've had this conversation a billion times in the last few interviews that I've done. You've probably seen the one I did with Travis. Probably seen the one I did with Kiani. Pose the same question: how important is it for people to just explore the idea of entrepreneurship? Because again, like I've spoke with Kiani and Travis, you know, not everybody is meant to be a boss. You need people to work. But I do feel like, because I dabble in the stock market. That's my number one vehicle. And then maybe I'd go to business, real estate. I'm not really that interested in just yet, but like business and stock market is kind of like where I prefer to play. But Yeah, how important do you feel is it that we have ownership of something?
It's extremely important. And this is coming from a girl who was very follow the rules, like go up corporate ladder, for a couple of reasons. Two, being laid off changed my whole perspective. No, actually, let me take another step back. So when I pivoted into tech, it was mainly because that was the first time I ever took a risk. And it showed me what's out there and what's possible. There's different industries out there that like the salary is very different. There's a lack of exposure, I think, within our community of what's out there. So I say that in the sense of you don't know what's out there. And I feel like limiting ourselves to like what we only are accustomed to is holding us back. When I was laid off, that showed me one, I was just a number because even within the tech industry, I thought I was safe and I wasn't. So at the end of the day, they're gonna think about themselves at the end of the day. You're just a number. I think having a 9 to 5 is absolutely important, especially, like, if you pivoting into entrepreneurship because I think unless you already know it's gonna be successful, I think just quitting your job completely and just jumping into entrepreneurship, some people can do that, but I think that that might not be the safest for a lot of people, especially in this economy right now, right? I say, like, use your job as just a tool. Like, it is a tool for you to hopefully it's something you want to do, or maybe not, but that's just one stream of income. Gain skills, gain, whatever benefits that that job gives you, utilize them, but utilize it and then do whatever you're supposed to do. I feel like relying on one stream of income is just not the best to do. And just coming from being laid off, like my life just overnight changed. Like, because my cost of living was a lot higher because of just what I was making. I was making the most money I was ever making in my life. So I went from that to having nothing. So it's
Mm.
like I had no emergency fund. I barely had a savings. So it's like how can my life change so drastically just because one person made a decision? Like that to me is crazy. Like I feel like for us to have our own power, like in that situation, of course, have a 9 to 5. Like I'm never gonna say like, oh, don't have 9 to 5 because I just have one and I'm probably still gonna have one just as a form of income, even if it's ends up being part-time eventually, whatever the case may be. Having that is great, but it's one form of income. Having multiple is the way to go, and I'm learning that now. And I was not taught that growing up. Having, not just a savings account, high yield savings account, investing,
Yeah.
all these things. I didn't know it. I didn't know none of that. So it's like I'm realizing, and the reason I make that point is because of the exposure. I was not given that. So the same way I said when I pivoted into the tech space, like there's just so much more out there. And I think that as especially communities of color, we're not exposed enough and it's not our fault. I think it's done intentionally that we don't have access to a lot of things and a lot of knowledge. So I just feel like please, like have your own something. And it doesn't necessarily mean you like you it could like you said investing in something or like there's other ways to make passive income, something. Just don't rely on just one form of income because the way my life changed overnight, I just don't wish that on nobody. So I strongly encourage something, do something.
No,
So
I definitely agree. Like I definitely learned over time that, your 9 to 5 is supposed to be is gonna be your first business partner. So whatever you make from there, you use that to help fund your dream, fund your business. And, thankfully during the pandemic, like I was an essential employee.
mm,
So, I was one of the, I got to keep my job. But it definitely kind of really opened my eyes because it was honestly like almost divine like timing. Cause I had knew at the top of 2020, you know, I was like, okay, here we are. I'm 26 now at that point, and I'm like, "All right, I need this next decade of my life to be different than the last decade." Like, the last decade was all high school, college, first few years of adulting. Like, I'm like, "I need 2020 to 2030. This needs to look way different." Like, I have to be setting up a whole foundation. Like, I need to be educating myself. I need to start building something. And then the pandemic happened, and I was like, okay, everything just kinda just sped up. Like, I was just taking my time with it. It just everything just pandemic hit, everything sped up. So now I'm just reading a lot more and I'm like, oh, okay. Cause God forbid, like, that we ever go through that again. I'm not finna be asked out. Not happening. Nah, I mean, like I said, I was one of the lucky ones the first go round. And I ain't gonna be the one if it happens again. No, 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 no. I don't want that nobody to have that type of power over me to, if I'm to ever lose my job, that I now have to go to unemployment to figure that out. Like that's why I picked up trading, because that's one that that's a skill set that nobody can strip from me. You don't tell me when to clock in, you don't tell me when to eat, you don't tell me when to clock out. And my work hours can literally be but maybe 10 minutes. My work day can literally be 10 minutes in and out. I've made my money for the day. Cool. Just like that. Simple. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. My folks, my mom, she's been with the same company since I've been born. Like, so she's been with the same company almost 30 years. My dad, he's been self-employed since he got out the service. But yeah, they definitely just didn't teach me about I could have probably definitely went to my father. At least I know it's definitely in my blood because of my father. Because my father's self-employed and his father, my grandfather, has been self-employed. They've always worked for themselves. So I definitely know it was in my blood. But like to the extent of where they were just comfortable just constantly giving up, you know, you're still not technically free when you're self-employed like that, like until your money is on automatic. And I'm like, all right, now as a millennial, I'm like, all right, cool. I have way better knowledge. I have way better game. There's way more skill sets now. Like, there's no reason for me not to get rich. There's no reason for me not to get wealthy. There's too much information out here. And that's just something I always like to just share with like friends and like the audience too. Like, there's too much money out here for you to not figure out a way to make a dollar.
Yeah.
Too many ways. Too many. Man. No, this has been impactful. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Do how actually you know what? Hmm. Since we have a common interest with Body Prime, right? So
Okay.
how did you end up there?
Well, speaking about mental health, it was post pandemic. So I started going 2021 because I gained a whole ton of weight.
Mhm.
I gained a whole ton of weight. I was just mentally not in a great place. I remember I found him off of someone I knew who on their social media. So then I was like, oh, I'm gonna check him out or whatever. Because I think for me, I tried working out, right? Like I'll go to the gym or I'll go to like Planet Fitness or whatever the case may be. But I'm not gonna what am I gonna say? I'm not going to push myself. I'm gonna just do what I need to do. I'll do my little cardio. I'll do whatever I gotta do. And I remember in college, I had guy friends who tried to get me in the gym, and it's like, yeah, but then I was like, I'm not gonna do it on my own. Like, I'm just not. Like,
You
I'm
just need
not
the
gonna
need the
challenge
accountability.
myself. Like, the weight's too heavy. You literally can even ask Travis. Like, I remember when the weight was a little too heavy. I was like, oh, it's too heavy. I didn't even try. It wasn't even. I didn't even try to see if I could do it. But yeah, I think I was initially when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's so interesting just to see so many, especially women, like carrying strong weight, like lifting strong weight." I was like, that's I don't know. I never really thought of myself doing that. So I decided to try it. And I remember because I was going with my sister at the time, we needed to go at a particular time just because of her schedule. So we were doing 5 a.m.s. We were doing 5 a.m.s 4 times a week. So
Mm,
literally, I remember, I don't know what was on. I was on. I was just so determined, and we were doing that 4 days a week. And I remember I lost all the weight. It was just so drastic. So, yeah, that's kind of how I ended up starting to go, and I've been there since.
AM 4 days straight.
I
That
don't
is
know. I was on
dedication.
some sort of something because
Hey, I mean, listen, as a former personal trainer, like I mean, I understand like having to get up that early every single day to train people, like 4:30 in the morning. I had to get up for 5 a.m. clients, 5:30 clients. But like it's not for the weak. It ain't easy.
no, I can't do
But
that. I tried. I tried to do it again. It didn't work. I have to be back on that again for me to do that. That's
no,
crazy.
honestly, I tell people like train. I think training in the morning is way better than training in the evening.
Yeah.
I just think the energy level is just way different. I just think that you just have more and better output fresh off of waking up than it is after you worked your complete work day and then now you're literally hanging on for dear life. Like
Yeah.
now you're just completely exhausting yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas like me going in the morning, like that's a jump start to my day.
And you have the rest of your day. I feel like when I was doing it, like,
Yeah.
I was like, "Wow, I have the rest of my day." That's why I would love to go back to that. I just would have to rearrange my life, going to sleep at a certain time again to be able to do it. But I would prefer it because at the end of the day, I'm just exhausted. There's more excuses.
Yeah, no, believe me, when I was doing e-com when I was selling on Amazon, it was perfect because I was also training at the gym studio, so I would if I'm not teaching, then I'm taking the class at 6 a.m. At 6 a.m., take the class, come home, shower, eat, you know, fill up what's it called? Pack up any orders that I have, and then, you know, pack them into the car because I gotta get ready to go back to the studio to teach, and then, go do what I gotta do, come back home, shower, go to bed, same thing over. I'm like, listen, I feel perfect every single day. It
I
felt
will say though, I would
perfect
always have to
routine.
have a midday nap though. I'll crash around like 2. That's the only
That I realized that, like, that's why I try not to be home too much. I try to stay away from doing naps because then it's gonna throw off my sleep schedule.
Yeah,
So that's why I try to be out a little bit more, like during like midday. Because if I'm at home all day, I'm too obviously I'm tempted to,
just run.
just go crawl in my bed and just take the nap. But I'm like, listen, if I'm at least if I'm out, I'm gonna force myself to be up so that way I don't throw off my sleep schedule. Because I I go to bed, 9, 10 o'clock. Like I'm very strict about that. So if I sleep mid morning, sleep mid afternoon, that 9, 10 o'clock is gonna probably be pushed to like 11,
Mhm.
probably after midnight,
Yeah.
if that. But no, again, thank you for agreeing to come on my podcast and talk about your brand, entrepreneurship, mental health. Please drop your socials or how people can tap in with you, tap in with the brand.
Yeah, my Instagram is Keep Glo'N Wellness, so it's, KEEPGLON Wellness on Instagram, starting up TikTok again for that too, so you can find it as well with that same brand on TikTok, and yeah, or you can check out my brand as well at keepglowingwellness.com, so it's spelled the same exact way, but .com.
All right. Well, guys, one last thing. Of
Yes.
course, I have to ask every single guest on here. This is called Millennial Gem, so I need one powerful gem to leave us with.
I would say tap into what's inside of you. Like, you never know what's on the inside of you. And the reason why I say that is I had no desire to step into entrepreneurship. But when you start to kind of like learn about yourself and tap into the gifts that you have inside of you, you have no idea what's on the other side of it. So, one thing I would say is just kind of lean into that. You may not have been encouraged to explore it. I know my creativeness was not encouraged as a kid, but you, again, have no idea why that was placed in you. Explore it. You never know what's on the other side of it.
Or here's your gem, folks. All right. It's been another episode of the Millennial Gems podcast. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.